Hey everybody, and welcome to another great session for Summer Training 2020. Joining me today is Alexander Malchagin, and we are going to talk about something that is really important, though you may not recognize just yet how important it is. And that is the application from the side of the school, the staff of school, and others who may be important to your application process, very specifically recommenders. So what is our plan for today? Of course, we're going to be talking about recommendations, which you know are hugely important and very valuable in the review of your application as a whole. The counselor, what is the role of the counselor and who can that person be? All of the forms. We love talking about forms, don't we? But mainly so that you know very well what to expect before you really get into the process. And then what is the role of your teachers in all of this? And of course, the questions you should be writing down so that you can ask them on session day. All right, Alexander's going to take it over from here.
So first of all, let's talk about recommendation letters. I would say that recommendation letter is the main function of any recommender because it is the way how any recommender can express you and to explain why do you need to get into the college, why are you a unique person. As you know, the American colleges do not pay attention only to grades, to GPA or exam scores. They also need to know how other people think about you, and that is why we need recommenders. Let's talk about some general tips. So first of all, you should choose the recommender wisely. It should be a person who knows you very good and who can show you from a positive side to uncover you and your experience in school. Uh, in order to write a recommendation letter, a recommender should understand how to do this. And here's where he needs your help. Please explain everything to the recommender or do like I did like 2 years ago. So what I did, I found an article in English about how to write a good recommendation letter. And then I translated it and sent to my recommenders. Remember that every recommender should add something new. So this is why you don't need to overload your application with too many recommenders. In most cases, 3 are enough. Basically, colleges require about 2 recommenders per application. Remember that quality is much more important here than the quantity. And remember that they need to use specific examples to prove their words. Moreover, all recommendation letters should be in English, so you can ask your school English teacher to translate them. But please also remember that an English teacher should put his signature on the translation.
And let's remind people that we have examples of some of these things that are really important for you in the student resources folder, which you will be reminded of throughout summer training because it's full of really important resources and templates so that you do not have to reinvent the wheel. In fact, that article that Alexander is talking about, you can find a copy of it there as well. So thank you, Alexander.
So what can your recommender write about? Basically, he can include everything about your achievements, your academic accomplishments, academic history, research experience, classwork, maybe even volunteering experience, or just some personal qualities. It's very personal and it varies from a person to person. But the most important thing here is that your recommender must prove the college that you are a good student that has a wish to work there very hard and to achieve your goals.
So then, the question is, who can be my recommender, but probably more importantly, who should be my recommender? So definitely a lot of people think about their counselor. Years ago, it used to be that the counselor recommendation was required. It is not required any longer by the Common Application or the Coalition Application. However, be careful because certain universities will still have that requirement, which is another reason why you should pay close attention to all of the application requirements for each individual institution, because though often they're quite similar, there are some differences. So the counselor can be a good recommender. Generally, the person who is your counselor is the director of your school or the zavuch. But so few of you actually have a decent enough relationship with that person for them to know you well enough to write a meaningful recommendation letter. So think, great title, that's prestigious. Okay, you get a recommendation from the director of your school, but if they don't know you well enough, then it is not worth the prestige of the title, okay? So think about who else you could ask. A teacher. So this could be your class teacher or any other teacher from your school. Now remember, there are a lot of institutions that will require recommendations from specific types of teachers. Generally speaking, you should have no fewer than one recommendation from a teacher, and in most cases, two. That may be that a university requires you to provide a recommendation from a teacher of English and a teacher in the hard sciences, or maybe a teacher in the social sciences or humanities and a teacher in the sciences. Again, pay close attention to the requirements of every individual institution, but think in advance of who you should be asking for these. A coach could be a really great option if you are involved in any sort of paraprofessional or professional sport activities. Even a dance instructor or someone like that. So if you're on a national like folk dance team, great. Somebody who has known you for several years, who knows your work ethic, who knows how well you work on a team. All of those indicators of your character can be very valuable in the application process. An academic advisor. So this could be especially somebody who has been involved with you in any other outside of school academic activities. But again, that's not the most common, but for you, it could be the ticket. So a research advisor. Some of you have been or will be involved in research of some kind through a local university or through an institute of some kind. So that person knows you very well, is able to express to the admissions committee the initiative that you have taken to do something pretty extraordinary. Most high school students don't get involved in research. How have you been in the laboratory, or how have you been at the committee table talking about that research project? And that is something so valuable to an admissions committee, because most likely you will want to continue in some sort of capacity doing research on campus. Who else? An Education USA advisor. Myself, Irina, Natalia, Guillermo, any of us who know you very well would be happy to write a recommendation letter for you. So, a lot of you are involved in many other things outside of the classroom, beyond your academic endeavors. A lot of you have graduated from art school or music school. Because you have been involved in that for so many years, those teachers, lecturers, tutors have seen you grow and develop over time. Who better to add an additional recommendation? But remember, you really should not, I'm going to go back actually, you really should not ask somebody just because it sounds good, or just because you think, oh, I need another recommendation. No, remember what Alexander said earlier. It is about quality versus quantity. Now, would you be surprised to know that some universities now are allowing students to have their peers, meaning their friends, recommend them? It is quite rare, but it is possible. So don't be surprised if you see that as an option on your application. All right, moving on. So you have chosen your recommenders. You have spoken with them about the letters. You've spoken with them about the timeline. You have shown them this document to help explain to them how to write a quality recommendation letter. What next? So where do they upload this document? Well, the first thing that you need to do, either on the Common Application or the Coalition application, you need to log in, and then you need to invite your recommender. So just like you need to invite your counselor, you need to invite your teacher for recommendations and other recommenders. Here you can also see, if you want, you can invite a parent or an advisor who will be able to review your application, but please note, those are not invitations to become recommenders. The teacher and other recommenders, those are the ones that you need to do. So you click on that, you enter their contact information, they then receive an email, and Alexander is going to tell you what happens next.
So the recommender should receive an email with a short link that leads to the site to finish the registration process. The registration process is really short. It just asks several questions, but here I would recommend you to sit down with your recommender and to finish the registration together, because the site is in English and it may be a problem for some people. What else do I need to know? So you need to know the different types of recommenders. And basically there are two main types, the counselor and the teacher. They have different roles. Now let's discuss the counselor role. The counselor role, well, first of all, the counselor can be a zavuch, the director of the school, or even in some cases, it can be the teacher of your class, классный руководитель. So the counselor role is to fill all documents about the school, its description, its system, how do they report the grades, do they have class ranks, ratings, etc. Of course, it also need to upload a recommendation letter. And one of the most important here is that counselor should upload your grades for the previous school years using transcripts. Basically, it's 3 years, 10th, 9th, and 8th grade. But in some cases, 8th grade can be optional. Your counselor also should submit mid-year and final report. It is about the grades of your current school year. It's if you study in the 11th grade. Because most applications, especially if you apply using early decision, starts in fall, so you don't have all the grades, and here where you need these options. Here you can see the example of the school profile. So you can see some basic information about the school, when it was founded, which achievements does it have, grading system, GPA system, etc. And here you can see the school report. It forms automatically based on the questions that council answers in the Common App. Basically, it includes such questions as which language is the primary language of your school? Do you have exams? Which grades do you include in transcripts, and etc.
Okay, so what does this look like from the side of the counselor when they log into the Common Application and open up that account? So they're going to see a list of all of the students who are utilizing the Common Application and have requested them as a counselor. For all of you, this means probably just one person, yeah? They will then see a link to your information, but this table that they see when they first open the Common Application is most important because it's a table essentially of reminders. So to ensure that they get things submitted on time and that they know when the next deadline is coming up. So for those of you who plan to apply early decision, 1 or 2, or early action, it's very important that you indicate that in the Common Application Coalition application in order to ensure that your counselor sees that here and recognizes that, okay, that is complete for that student. You'll also see that there are other forms that need to be submitted by the counselor, as Alexander explained, and here they will understand, has something been submitted and was it registered in the system, okay? So then they go to their workspace and they click on that particular student. They will see different categories of information that they need to fill out. Some of these are optional, but most of them are required. Class rank in Russia is not something that most schools do. And so that is not something that you can indicate that that's not, your school does not rank the students. But GPA obviously is something that will be reported, and that is part of your transcript. Please make sure to keep your transcript in the 5.0 system. Do not convert it to the American 4.0 system because the universities will do that for you. So you don't have to convert. Now, there's information here too about the type of curriculum that you have undertaken during your school years, how they would rate you compared to other students, which is the image that you can see here on the right-hand side, whether or not you are below average, are you average, are you far above average, so outstanding in like the top 5%. This is really important, especially because Russia does not have class rank. So the counselor's impression of how you, unfortunately, how you compare to others actually will be quite important in this process. So it's something that you might wish to discuss with your counselor in advance, just so that it's not, so it's something that they can consider earlier on. You can also see here that there's a green check mark, and that indicates that a certain section has already been completed. So that will, again, help the counselor understand what is done and what still needs to be done. Additionally, there is the disciplinary history, which all American high schools have a disciplinary record for all students. I mean, in most cases, it's clean. It means that the student does not have any disciplinary history. However, in Russia, that is not something that is common. And so what's important, though, is that you explain that the university simply wants to know if you have had any problems of misconduct in the school and whether or not the counselor would like to communicate with the universities about this by phone. I think for all of you, that will be no disciplinary history, obviously no felonies or misdemeanors, and no, they don't need to communicate by phone because you guys all have a clean record. The written evaluation. Again, remember that your counselor recommendation is no longer required by all universities. It's not a required component of the Common Application or Coalition application. However, some institutions still require it. The written evaluation is different. It is not a recommendation. However, it is an opportunity for your counselor to give some feedback about you to the admissions committee. Firstly, important to know, how long have you known each other? And what are just a few words that come to mind to describe you? It can be hard to think about, but don't think too long about it. And don't be concerned if your counselor chooses words that are a bit mundane or average. It's okay, it's okay, because what's most important is what's next, the written evaluation. So any sort of comments or examples about how you have excelled in your academics, in involvement in school outside of your classes, personal characteristics that they think are really valuable for the admissions committee to know. So they can either upload that document or they can write it directly into the Common App field here. Again, if your counselor doesn't speak English, then you would want them to write something in advance in Russian and you can translate it for them, okay? And it doesn't have to be notarized because it's just going into the Common App. What else? Information about the transcript that is being submitted along with the application to very quickly help the admissions committee understand what are the most recent grades being submitted. The primary language of instruction is Russian, obviously, and then questions about the EGE, right? The standard leaving examinations, all right? So it is important to indicate that the promotion within the educational system for lower or senior secondary school, yes, that is the ÖGE. That is the ÖGE. But the final leaving exams, EGE, you would only indicate yes if you have graduated from high school already and taken those, okay? And then Alexander is going to continue with the teacher's role.
So another type of the recommenders is the teacher. And teacher has two main responsibilities here. To write a recommendation, well, we already discussed it, but I would like to add here that the recommendation should be about 1 page, no longer. And the second role of the teacher here is to write a brief evaluation that will be discussed on the next slides. So here you can see what does it consist of. First of all, the teacher should ask some questions to compare you with the rest of the class based on your academic achievement and your intellectual promise. Like, are you an average student, or maybe you are excellent, or maybe you even one of the best students in the career of the teacher? And here the teacher also need to write the first word that comes to his mind to describe you. This might be difficult for some teachers, but please do not overload this section because it will be clear that it's not the first words if you write like a very big list of the words. Here you also need to, the teacher needs to write when did he teach you, in which grades, and here you can see the special link how to submit the recommendation letter. Again, the recommendation should be translated. It can be done either by you or even your English teacher, but if you decide to ask your teacher to translate it, make sure that the document has his signature.
And if you translate it, it will not be official unless you submit it to me or another Education USA advisor for a evaluation. So basically, what you do is you submit to us the original recommendation letter or transcript, your translation of the recommendation or transcript. We review the accuracy of your translation, and then we will write you an official letter on Education USA Russia letterhead that indicates that we have verified the accuracy of the translation of such and such a document for such and such a student. We sign it, we scan it, we send it back to you. You would then put those all together so that the university can trust that the translation is correct. Alexander, I can't remember if you did that or not, but it's something a lot of a lot of students will do.
I haven't because I just signed it. I mean, my English teacher translated and signed it, so I haven't submitted to you.
And that's really the best opportunity because, very honestly, in the fall, I think you can imagine we as advisors get really, 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 really busy. And so, firstly, plan ahead. Know that if you need a translation verification from one of us, you need to ask us for that and send us the original document with your translation at least 2 weeks in advance. If you want a recommendation letter from one of us, make sure to request that recommendation and add us as a recommender at least 3 weeks in advance, just because things get very, very hectic in the fall. So always, always, always do things in advance, probably earlier than you think you need to. Yeah. Thank you all so very much for your attention. Again, write down all of those great questions that have come to mind throughout this presentation and join us on session day number 2 to discuss. Thank you so much. Thanks, Alexander.